Hi, my name is Robert Chelle with Chelle Law, and I'm an attorney that assists nurse practitioners with employment contract and independent contractor agreement issues. Today I'm going to talk about non-competes for NPs. So, what is in a standard non-compete, and then some of the red flags and things that you need to think about that could affect your future negatively. So, first, you need to identify the state that you're in and then the current non-compete laws. There have been a lot of changes over the last 5 years. There are a handful of states where non-competes are just outright banned and unenforceable. There has been a steady increase in bans on non-competes for physicians over the last, I'd say, 3 to 5 years. But the important thing is not every state has added in or extended those protections to nurse practitioners. Some states, it's just physicians. And then, PAs, NPs, dentists, chiropractors, they're still, can have enforceable non-competes. You need to make certain that you're in a state, if they have changed the laws, that they have extended those to a nurse practitioner as well. So that's the first thing to think about. Next, kind of what goes into a standard non-compete. So it really contains three things. The scope, which is very important for a nurse practitioner, meaning what can't you do during the restrictive period. Two, how long it lasts. So is it a year, is it 2? And then what is the geographic restriction? Where can't you work? So let's kind of walk through all three of those. The first one I think is the most important for a nurse practitioner, the scope, meaning there are kind of varying degrees of strictness for a nurse practitioner's, scope of what they can and can't do. So what you want, ideally, it's specifically what you are doing for that employer. So let's say you're working as a hospitalist. You want it to say you can't work as a hospitalist for 1 year. Or if you're doing ED, you can't work in the ED. Or if you're working for a cardiologist, you can't work as a nurse practitioner with another cardiology practice. So why is this important? Well, NPs can do a lot of different things. You can work in primary care, you could do urgent care, as I said before, you could be a hospitalist, you could do ED, you could work in other specialties. I reviewed a contract last week that said they couldn't work in nursing, meaning even if they wanted to go back and work as an RN, pick up some PRN shifts, that would be prohibited as well. That's absolutely something that I advise they could not agree to. So you really want to limit the scope to what you are specifically doing for that employer, which will then give you a lot of flexibility to get through that year or two where the non-compete is in effect. So that's the first thing and the most important thing for this video. Second, how long does it last? Generally, most states find that 1 year is a reasonable time period for a non-compete. I wouldn't accept above that. So you'll see some places that try to push it to 2. I would make certain that it stops at 1. And then, as I said before, most courts would find that a reasonable time restriction. And then the next thing would be the geographic scope. So ideally, it would be 5 to 10 miles from your primary practice location. But as always, the details matter. And so let's say you're working for an organization that has many offices across an area. You want to make certain it doesn't say you can't work within 10 miles from every office that they own. You want it to be specific to the offices that you worked for that employer. So it should be 10 miles from your primary practice location, or perhaps if you're doing 2 locations, attaches to 2 of those locations. But you can't accept that it applies to a bunch of different locations that you never even provided care at. One tricky thing is if you're doing home health care. Obviously, many NPs do that. And so, attaching to every single house that you went to provide home care is tricky. And so the language there really needs to be limited to, sometimes we'll do it from the office of, where you're working, or maybe the city where you're providing care. I mean, there's a million ways you can do it, but just making certain that you have options after the contract terminates is the most important thing. And I think for NPs, they actually have, because they can do so many different areas, of nursing, it allows them much more flexibility if the language in the contract reflects that. So that's the most important thing, is just giving the NP flexibility when the contract terminates, so they're not stuck driving 45 miles out just to get through that 1 year. So hopefully that was helpful, a little kind of a primer on non-competes for nurse practitioners. If you have any questions about your employment contract or independent contractor agreement, feel free to contact my law firm. Our contact info is listed below in the description, and I appreciate you watching the video. All right, thanks. Take care.